Have you ever wondered what truly lurks beneath the streets of New York? Far from the gaze of thousands of hurried people walking over concrete and concrete, unaware of what moves in the shadows below. The city's underground holds more than abandoned tunnels and subways. It houses forgotten corridors, galleries echoing with footsteps that seem to belong to no human being, and a metallic smell of old iron that permeates the air, mixed with the constant humidity that penetrates even to the bone. It's a world apart, where light rarely reaches, and the silence is not just silence, but an invitation for the imagination to fill the void with the most unsettling scenarios possible. In this subterranean labyrinth, what happens seems to defy any common explanation. The FBI, with its special operations units, maintains constant surveillance for suspicious movements that the general public can't even imagine. State-of-the-art equipment, thermal cameras, and strategic sensors are scattered throughout the tunnels, monitoring every sound, every vibration, every signal that might indicate something unusual. And even with all this technology and experience, agents frequently report sensations that defy reason, chills that run down the spine, echoes that originate from no identifiable source, shadows that move strangely, as if the subterranean world itself had a life of its own. As we walk through these underground passages in our imagination, we can sense the tension agents feel when they spot something they shouldn't, something that until then was hidden and seemed merely part of the urban myth of the city's forgotten corridors. And it's precisely this tension that keeps the FBI's sleuthing experts on high alert, recording every detail, every noise, every suspicious movement. But what they found goes far beyond any routine surveillance. There are signs that don't fit any known protocol, marks and symbols that suggest something different, something that defies the logic of any conventional investigation. Imagining these scenes, it's impossible not to feel a pang of fear, not the fear of a common criminal, but that primal fear born of the unknown, of what lurks in the shadows, far from the light and safety of the world we know. And this feeling isn't just in our imagination. The agents themselves report nights when, even after leaving the tunnels, the metallic sounds and echoes linger in their minds, as if the underground had left an invisible mark, difficult to erase. And then arises the question everyone wants answered. What exactly was moving through that maze of steel and concrete, following paths that seem to have never been officially mapped? Something that the records still don't fully reveal, but which, little by little, has begun to draw the attention of those observing from above, of those who understand the signs before they become visible to anyone. It's a silent call, a subtle warning that blends real danger with the feeling that we are about to witness something beyond any rational explanation. And as this tension grows, and the feeling that something unknown lurks in every corner of the underground becomes more palpable, it becomes impossible to ignore. What lies ahead in the next recordings will challenge everything we believe we know about security, surveillance, and the very workings of New York's tunnels. It's at this point that the mysteries begin to intertwine, and every step taken by the agents, every click of the cameras, and every sound captured brings us closer to something no one could have predicted. And as we continue to imagine each step of these agents through the dark corridors, you might ask yourself, how would you react if you were in their shoes, feeling the chill of dampness in your bones and hearing footsteps that belong to no one? If you've ever gotten lost in an ancient tunnel, explored abandoned places, or felt that shiver when you realize something is out of place, share your experience in the comments. Knowing how you feel or think when faced with mysterious situations like this helps not only create a space for exchange and community here on the channel, but also allows us to understand different perspectives on these phenomena that defy logic. And if this dive into New York's underground has already made your heart race, or if you're curious to discover every detail we're yet to reveal, leave a like. It's a simple way to show that you want to continue following stories like this, which explore behind-the-scenes police action, disturbing mysteries, and events that challenge the human mind. Each like helps keep the channel alive, promote these stories, and ensure we can bring you ever more engaging, disturbing, and fascinating content. And of course, if you're not yet part of the community, sign up at Conflict Route. This isn't just about passively watching, it's about being part of a journey alongside other curious, inquisitive, and passionate people who explore mysteries, crimes, and operations that no one would ever expect to see documented. By subscribing, you ensure you won't miss a single detail of these stories, and you also help us continue exploring cases that defy reality, always with care, investigation, and a dash of suspense that gets the adrenaline pumping. So, share your impressions, click like, and stay with us as we delve even deeper into this forgotten New York underground, where each tunnel hides secrets that no one dares reveal. And what we discover next promises to test the limits of your imagination. As the agents advanced through the underground corridors, the feeling that something unusual was approaching began to hang heavy in the air. Their flashlights reflected off the damp, mold-covered walls, revealing ancient inscriptions and signs that seemed decades old, but whose origin no one could identify. In a makeshift room within a larger tunnel, the team huddled around old maps and digital records, discussing each point that showed unusual movement. On the screens, thermal cameras captured images that seemed at once familiar and completely disconcerting. Shadows moving erratically, heat spots that appeared and disappeared illogically, and magnetic signals that defied any known technical explanation. The atmosphere was tense, with every click of the equipment and every hiss in the headphones sounding like small warnings that something far beyond routine police work was approaching. One of the agents, a veteran of high-risk operations, frowned as he studied the data. He knew he'd seen many strange things in his career, but the irregularity of the signals he was capturing left him disconcerted. "It's not just ordinary movement," he muttered, almost to himself. Another, younger, squinted at the screens, feeling a chill run down his spine as he tried to process images that seemed to move of their own accord, as if the tunnels themselves breathed and reacted to their presence. Each footstep in the tunnel made the creaking metal of the grates echo for miles. Each drop of water falling from the ceiling seemed to mark an unsettling rhythm that no one could follow. It was impossible not to wonder what was really moving in the forgotten corridors beneath New York. Between low-key conversations and technical observations, the agents began to notice patterns that didn't fit any logical explanation. Strange, seemingly coded symbols appeared on walls, doors, and even the floor in places where no one had any reason to leave any marks. Some symbols resembled ancient runes, others looked like adapted hieroglyphics, but all carried a disturbing sense of intentionality. A subtle but perceptible magnetic current in the measuring devices indicated that some form of unknown energy was moving through the tunnels, moving independently of any human activity recorded on official maps. The atmosphere blended science and superstition, reason and fear, creating a sense of constant alert. Every decision the team made needed to be swift and precise, but at the same time, there was a sense that they were dealing with something that could transform their understanding of reality. Meanwhile, the sounds in the tunnels continued unabated. A metallic creak emerged from one spot, disappearing as quickly as it had come. A distant crack seemed to respond to a movement from the team itself. Flashlights flickered, shadows loomed and receded, and footsteps echoed through corridors that, according to the maps, should have been empty. The agents began to question their own perception, feeling watched by something they couldn't see, something that was there but didn't belong to any known physical space. Psychological terror mixed with adrenaline, making every breath seem heavy and every decision crucial. It was as if the underground had a consciousness of its own, testing limits, gauging reactions, manipulating emotions. logic gave way to a growing sense that the city concealed a hidden truth, something that would never be fully understood by anyone unwilling to face the forgotten corridors with courage and mindfulness. Between signal monitoring and constant image analysis, the agents began to reorganize, trying to understand the patterns of suspicious movements. They studied every detail, noting every irregularity, comparing it with historical records and theories that could explain, at least minimally, the phenomenon. But the more they investigated, the more questions arose, and each partial answer seemed to open doors to an even greater unknown. The professionals' minds were tested at every moment. Quick decisions had to be made as anxiety grew, and the feeling that something unpredictable was about to reveal itself became palpable. And so, amid the metallic clang echoing through the tunnels, the irregular flashing of lights and signals that seemed to defy all logic, the team advanced, ever more immersed in what could not be just an ordinary occurrence. Each corridor they traversed seemed to lead to new discoveries, but also to increasing complexity, a tangle of mystery and danger that heightened the psychological impact of the mission. As the agents took notes, analyzed, and prepared, a growing sense took hold. The journey they had embarked on was far from being understood, and the hidden truth they sought seemed to whisper, invisibly, that something greater was about to reveal itself, demanding attention, courage, and a perception that transcended mere human vision. And it was at this point that the first truly disturbing signs began to unanimously capture everyone's attention, leaving in the air a question that none of the professionals dared to answer aloud, but which echoed silently in every mind present in that subterranean space. How do we react when everything we thought we knew about reality, control, and security is being challenged? If you've ever felt chills imagining this situation, write in the comments one word that sums up your feelings about this unsettling subterranean space. The underground corridors were no longer just tunnels, but a stage for tensions that seemed to materialize with every step. The agents, attentive to every sign, suddenly noticed something that transformed their entire surveillance routine into a completely surreal scene. The cameras recorded a movement that could not be explained by any map, any protocol, or any known logic. A train slowly appeared on the tunnel's dark horizon, but it was no ordinary train. Its surface was covered in symbols that seemed to pulse with their own energy, inscriptions reminiscent of ancient rituals, markings that suggested secret experiments or cults operating far from public view. Every detail seemed intentional, meticulously designed, and even from a distance, it was impossible not to feel the sensation that something ancient, powerful, and unknown was manifesting itself there, before everyone. The impact on the team was immediate and profound. The veteran who had always remained calm now seemed lost, frowning and muttering words no one could understand. The younger agents exchanged glances, trying to find some rational explanation, but everything they saw seemed to defy the very logic of reality. It was as if time slowed as the train moved through the tunnel, each second stretched, heavy, charged with a tension that made the air seem denser, almost suffocating. Footsteps that had previously echoed predictably now disappeared or drowned. Out the metallic sound of the train, as if space itself had been distorted, as if the tunnel had a consciousness and was manipulating the perception of everyone inside. As the camera followed the train, symbols and inscriptions transformed into visual enigmas that no expert could easily decipher. Some resembled traces of occult societies, others resembled formulas or signals used in secret experiments, perhaps to conduct energy or even manipulate the minds of those who approached. Each trace seemed to carry intentions, messages that could not be immediately understood, but which left an unsettling feeling that they were facing something far beyond a simple underground occurrence. The agents began to realize They were dealing not just with physical movement, but with something affecting the mind, provoking a kind of psychological discomfort, questioning their perceptions and beliefs. As they advanced, the sounds multiplied, the creaking of the train, the creaking of ancient structures, the faint hum of an invisible energy coursing through the tracks. Everything seemed synchronized with the very rhythm of the anxiety growing within the agents. It was impossible not to feel the direct impact of this experience, a mixture of awe, fear, and fascination that permeated every fiber of the body. The sensation of witnessing a hidden truth grew ever more intense, and each movement of the train seemed to carry revelations no one had anticipated. The line between reality and illusion began to blur. What had once been clear now seemed mutable, as if the tunnel itself possessed the power to bend perceptions, play with the mind, and challenge decisions that had previously seemed obvious. And then even more disturbing details emerged. Some symbols reflected light unusually, as if reacting to the team's presence, and other markings seemed to move, almost imperceptibly, at the periphery of vision. There was a sense of constant observation, as if something inside the train was aware of every gesture, every breath. The psychological tension reached levels unmeasurable by sensors or cameras. It was a direct, personal experience that infiltrated each agent's consciousness, testing the limits of courage, patience, and perception. Each decision became more weighty, each step needed to be carefully considered, and the mind, previously focused on protocols and procedures, now found itself shrouded in a labyrinth of mystery and suspicions that accumulated with each passing moment. As the train moved forward, the air seemed to vibrate differently, and the very sensation of space shifted. It was as if the object's presence was not only physical, but also metaphysical, altering the perception of time, movement, and the surrounding environment. The agents, trained to handle high-risk situations, now faced something that transcended any previous experience, something that required not only action but also mental resilience and the ability to absorb the impact of a revelation that could not be ignored. With every meter traveled, the train seemed to approach a point where past, present, and future possibilities blurred, creating an environment of absolute tension, a true psychological journey that tested limits and transformed every mind present in that underground. And given all this, the question that lingered was inevitable. Who or what was really controlling that train, and what intentions might lie behind those impossible symbols and movements? If you could imagine the same scene, the strange energy coursing through the tracks and the symbols pulsing before your eyes, what word would you use to describe this impact that defies reason and perception? Write in the comments the first word that comes to mind when faced with this enigmatic train and what it represents in the New York Underground. As the train progressed through the underground corridors, the FBI team intensified the operation with almost obsessive precision, implementing protocols that were rarely enforced. Every step was calculated, every piece of equipment strategically positioned, and cameras installed at impossible angles recorded every inch of the tunnel, capturing everything from minute vibrations in the floor to thermal fluctuations that indicated the presence of something beyond the physical. Behind the scenes, the tension was palpable. Agents and supervisors exchanged worried glances, consulting maps, analyzing signals, and making quick decisions, often without time to reflect on the strangeness that permeated every detail of the operation. The sense of desperation was silent but constant, like a lump tightening in the throat of every professional present, reminding them that they were dealing with something that escaped the usual rules of investigation and control. The attempt to intercept the train proved even more complex than anyone could have imagined. The orders were clear: approach, monitor, record every movement, and, if possible, slow or stop the vehicle for analysis. But the very structure of the tunnel seemed to conspire against the team's efforts. Lights flickering irregularly, shadows lengthening and receding, and metallic noises echoing unpredictably created a sense that the environment itself was testing the agent's patience, perception, and courage. Every movement toward the train seemed accompanied by an invisible resistance, as if the object possessed its own consciousness or was being guided by forces no one could fully comprehend. Frustration grew, but so did determination. Every decision made had a direct impact on the team's safety and the success of the operation, and the mindset of precision and discipline was challenged at every turn. The sensors, designed to capture any movement or electrical disturbance, were unable to maintain consistent tracking. The train appeared and disappeared from radars, cameras, and monitoring systems without any plausible explanation. It was as if it existed on a parallel plane, selectively touching the physical world, leaving traces only when it wanted to be observed. The agents began to feel the psychological effect of this impossibility of control, a mixture of helplessness and fascination that tested not only their professional skills, but also their emotional stability. The desperation became subtly transformative. Each decision, each step, each analysis of the situation became an internal journey, forcing them to question their own reality and the limits of what they believed was possible within their experience. Urgent phone calls rang out underground, orders from superiors sounding cold and direct, trying to maintain a sense of control that, in practice, seemed to slip through their fingers. Behind the scenes, communication was intense, but words couldn't fully explain what the equipment was recording. Each agent, focused on their role, felt the direct impact of dealing with a situation that mixed police action with phenomena that defied logic, demanding quick decisions amid a perception that seemed perpetually lagging, unable to keep up with what was actually happening before their eyes. It was an experience that transformed the operation into something more than a simple surveillance mission. It was a true exploration of the mind, fear, courage, and resilience. As the team tried to rationalize each piece of data and each record, a disturbing reality began to emerge. What they were observing did not entirely belong to the physical world they knew. Each intervention attempt seemed to encounter invisible barriers, each signal they received mixed with unfamiliar noises, and the feeling that they were facing something that defied the laws of physics grew by the minute. The psychological tension reached its peak, blending science, strategy, and intuition, and revealing how the behind-the-scenes nature of an operation can be as impactful as the visible events on the surface. The train was not just an object to be intercepted. It was a presence that transformed the environment, altered perceptions, and tested mindsets, challenging the FBI to find answers in a territory that seemed to exist between the real and the impossible. As the operation continued, each agent found themselves enveloped in a mixture of adrenaline, fascination, and terror, realizing that the decisions they made there would carry weight beyond mere tactical efficiency. Every movement, every adjustment to equipment, every analysis of invisible signals became part of a journey that not only sought to control the unknown, but also to understand the psychological impact of confronting something that defies human comprehension. And as the train disappeared and reappeared, leaving incomplete traces, contradictory signals, and a growing sense that the underground held greater secrets, the unsettling certainty emerged that what they were recording would not be easily deciphered, and that each discovery, each attempt at intervention, only deepened the mystery lurking beneath New York. If you were in that hallway with the team, feeling the impact of every strange signal, every sensor failure, and every shadow that seemed to react to movement, what word would come to mind to describe the feeling of helplessness in the face of the impossible? Write in the comments the first word that comes to mind as you imagine this operation that defies all logic and understanding. As the train disappeared and reappeared in the underground corridors, the agent's sense of reality began to fracture. Each camera recording seemed to contain contradictory information, images that changed when viewed more than once, and electrical signals that simply cancelled each other out without explanation. On the screens, subtle figures appeared in the shadows, movements that didn't correspond to any known route, and symbols that seemed to pulse with their own energy. Some agents began reporting chills, a constant pressure in their chests, and the feeling that they were being watched, even when isolated in different parts of the tunnel. It was as if an invisible consciousness was following every step, analyzing every decision, and manipulating the perception of anyone who strayed too close to what could not be understood by conventional methods. The psychological tension became almost physical. One agent described feeling a strange vibration coursing through his bones, as if the tunnel itself were emitting signals that stirred his mind. Another confessed that, when looking at the screens, he felt as if something was trying to communicate, not through language, but through sheer presence, as if each symbol, each shadow, were a coded message that no one had the ability to fully decipher. Theories began to circulate rapidly among the team. Secret experiments conducted decades ago, underground cults operating silently beneath the city, train lines that connected not only physical points, but also seemingly unknown dimensions where time and space did not follow predictable rules. Each hypothesis seemed more disturbing than the last, amplifying the emotional and psychological impact of the mission. Most disturbingly, with each attempt to rationalize what was being recorded, new inconsistencies emerged. The train seemed to defy not only physics, but logic itself. It moved without visible tracks in certain sections, sped up and slowed down for no apparent reason, and the symbols covering its surface seemed to rearrange themselves when no one was looking. The agents, accustomed to dealing with extreme situations, began to question their own perceptions. "Is it really a train?" wondered one veteran as he reviewed the videos repeatedly. "Or are we dealing with something that belongs to a reality we can't yet comprehend?" This constant doubt undermined confidence, turning every decision into a dilemma that blended rationality and intuition, experience and sensation, courage and fear. As they analyzed the recordings, they realized that the underground environment had direct effects on the mind. Some reported feeling the space expand or contract as if the tunnel were alive, responding to their presence in subtle and disturbing ways. Others commented on the sensation of being watched from all sides, even when no one was visible. Metallic sounds echoed impossibly, footsteps appeared without an owner, and the air seemed to vibrate in patterns no one could predict. It was as if the underground, the symbols, and the train were connected to a hidden truth, something so profound and ancient that it defied all human logic and all the security protocols they knew. Every detail amplified the psychological terror, transforming the surveillance experience into a journey of perception, mental resilience, and the ability to cope with the inexplicable. And as the agents tried to focus on technical analysis and strategic decisions, a growing unease took hold. What had actually been captured on the videos? Could what was moving through the tunnels be something more than a physical object? Perhaps a manifestation of unknown forces, a construct existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, or even a form of conscious energy capable of manipulating human perceptions. Every second spent observing the train made the familiar world unstable, questioning everything we knew about space, time, and security, and revealing that the true mission was not just to record and intercept, but to try to understand a phenomenon that transformed the minds of those who dared observe it. As the signals accumulated, interpretations diverged, and the feeling of being confronted with something that defied comprehension intensified. The team realized that every choice, every movement, and every decision made behind the scenes had profound psychological consequences. It was a test of courage, discipline, and perception, a testament to the fact that even the most trained professionals could be pushed to Their limits when confronted with the possibility that not everything that moves in the physical world follows the rules we believe we know. Every shadow, every symbol, and every noise became fragments of a hidden truth, and the perception of reality began to dissolve, leaving only the certainty that they were facing something that would require investigation, analysis, and mental fortitude to even partially comprehend. If you could feel the psychological pressure, the constant chills, and the feeling that your every step was being watched, what word would come to mind to describe the experience of confronting this train and the mysteries it holds? Write in the comments the first word that comes to mind when you imagine this confrontation with the unexplainable in the New York Underground. The air in the underground corridors became nearly unbreathable, charged not only with the smell of old iron and mold, but also with the tension that hung like a tangible shadow over every agent present. The train, which until then seemed to obey only its own enigmatic rules, suddenly vanished. There was no warning, no gradual deceleration, no sign of its departure. One moment it was there, pulsing with unknown energy and covered in symbols that defied all logic, and the next it simply evaporated from physical space as if it had never existed. Monitors and sensors registered only absolute emptiness, leaving the team in a state of shock as each screen reflected the echo of a presence that, even absent, seemed to continue to impact the space around it. Desperation took over. Supervisors communicated in low, urgent voices. Phone calls crisscrossed the tunnel with orders that sounded more like attempts to control the uncontrollable. But something much greater than protocols or tactics was at play. Agents began reporting disturbing experiences, vivid nightmares in which the tunnel stretched on indefinitely, and the ever-present train passed like a shadow through impossible corridors, its symbols glowing hypnotically. Some reported hearing the distant metallic creak echoing in their homes, while others saw the symbols appear in unlikely places around the city. On the walls of abandoned buildings, graffiti appearing out of nowhere, even in the cracks of seemingly ordinary sidewalks. The operation was no longer just physical. It had become a psychological phenomenon that invaded the minds of every professional involved, testing the limits of perception and sanity. The sense of madness spread silently but pervasively. What had once been control and certainty turned to doubt and anxiety. What the FBI had captured was so enigmatic that the records were immediately classified as top secret, accessible only to a select few and still incomplete. Every agent involved knew they had witnessed something far beyond any conventional operation, but the line between truth and perception became increasingly blurred. Even the most experienced began to question whether the train was truly a physical object or a manifestation of forces that manipulated reality, perception, and the human mind. New York City seemed closer to a living enigma than a familiar urban space, and the underground, with its forgotten tunnels and corridors, became a terrain where the impossible seemed possible. As night fell over the city, reports multiplied. Small details that once seemed insignificant now took on a disturbing weight. Metallic sounds picked up by old radios, echoes that didn't belong to any active subway line, and shadows that moved independently of any light. Some officers admitted to feeling the same train mentally traveling through the corridors, a phenomenon that defied scientific explanation and everyday logic. It was as if the train's presence had transcended the physical limits of the underground, infiltrating everyone's consciousness, a constant reminder that there was a hidden truth, invisible but present, operating between the tracks, the walls, and the minds of those who strayed too close. And even as the official records disappeared from accessible analysis, the emotional and psychological impact continued to reverberate. The train, or whatever it was, had not only disappeared, but had left traces that went beyond matter, a sense of unease that permeated every decision, every thought, and the realization that the city itself might be connected to something much deeper and more ancient than any investigation could grasp. Every symbol that appeared in random places, every strange sound heard in silence, every vivid memory in the agent's dreams reinforced the idea that the operation didn't end with the last recording. It continued, alive, invisible, and relentless, transforming the experience of those involved in a journey of profound psychological impact. The train's disappearance left not only questions, but a disturbing void. The feeling that something still silently circulates through New York's underground, invisible to the naked eye but tangibly present to those who dare observe, creates a climate of tension that goes far beyond initial curiosity. Every corridor, every tunnel, every forgotten space seems to carry a potential for revelation that no one dares to fully assert. And the mystery of the train remains, looming over the city like an indecipherable shadow, an enigma that never ends but transforms the perception of all who have come into contact with it. If you could feel the presence of this invisible train, the impact of its symbols, and the psychological weight it left behind, what word would come to describe this sense of mystery, unease, and absolute fascination? Write in the comments the first word that comes to mind when you imagine that, even though it's gone, it can still roam New York, invisible and disturbing. If you've made it this far, you've already realized that what happens underground in New York goes far beyond what we imagine, and that's exactly why stories like this deserve to be followed closely. If you want to continue delving into cases that blend mystery, police action, and mind-bending phenomena, it makes sense to subscribe to the channel now, because here at Conflict Route, we bring exactly this type of content with details, behind the scenes and reflections that you won't find anywhere else. And take the opportunity to leave a comment with the phrase, "I reached the end of the tunnel," so we know you watched until the end, and can also share your impressions of everything we saw together in this video. Every comment, every participation from you helps create a real and intense connection with the content, and also allows me to better understand what sparks the most curiosity or fascination in the community. If you enjoyed this experience and felt the tension, adrenaline, and mystery we tried to convey, give us a quick like as a gesture of recognition for the journey we've shared so far. It's not just a number. It's our way of saying it makes sense to continue exploring cases like this, which challenge reality and stir the minds of all of us. And look, there's a video right here that complements this topic, delving even deeper into the secrets of the underground and the mysteries hidden within New York's train tracks. Click and stay with me there, because the story isn't over yet, and the revelations that follow promise to be even more shocking.